Alright, we're going to be looking at the quadratic equation today, and by the end of this you should be able to interpret and solve questions related to quadratic relations. And specifically we're going to look at equations which don't have nice numbers which will allow us to factor. And our ultimate goal in this unit is to create and solve problems that involve trinomial expressions, which is what we're doing here. So how many ways can you find a solution to this equation? We could factor. We could find it by graphing. We could complete the squares. And then solve. What else could we do? We could use a calculator online calculator. Wolfram Alpha is an excellent place to calculate this. Graphing online. That's just to mention a few. I'm sure you could come up with a few on your own, but again, this is supposed to be a think, pair, share, and there's no real right answers. There's multiple answers. So today we're going to be looking at the quadratic equation, and ultimately our learning goal for this unit is to be able to solve quadratic equations. That's not what I want. Solve quadratic equations that have real roots using a variety of tools or methods. We've used factoring already. This unit, for this lesson, we're going to use the quadratic formula, which is what we're going to learn. We've learned how to graph. And a sample problem, solve x squared plus x minus 4 is equal to 0 using the quadratic formula, and verify algebraically using technology. And here's a few questions at the bottom that you could use as a test. You can use the quadratic equation to solve these equations and confirm that they're correct using desmos.com or some sort of online calculator. You're in good shape. Just a recap of our big picture also is that we're looking at going from standard form into factored form, and without further ado, this is the quadratic equation. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, where in this case, our a, b, and c are coming from the standard formula, which are the coefficients of the x squared, the coefficient of the x, and the constant c. And so if we look, it goes something like this, where if we substitute in the b value here, we substitute in the a value here, and down here, and the c value here, we actually get two values because there's a plus or minus that are here. So that's why we could look at this as root 1 and root 2, where the only thing that's different between the two is this plus or minus. And really, there's no real nice way of doing this. You guys have to memorize it. Visually, for those visual learners, this is what it looks like, where we've got one root. This is the negative b minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And the other root, which is negative b plus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And there's a plus here. And this is going to be something that we'll talk about. This is the midpoint of the roots, which is negative b over 2a, which is a shortcut. And just not to get into a whole bunch of details, but if we think of the axis symmetry in factored form, we've got a times x minus r1 times x minus r2. The midpoint of it would be r1 plus r2 divided by 2. Well, those roots are based on the quadratic equation, where we can take them, add them together, and what is really nice is that the square roots cancel out. We got negative b turns into negative 2b over 4a, which turns into negative b over 2a. And this here is what we're getting at. So if you're the type of person who wants to understand where something comes from, this gives you some explanation. You can make that solution or this proof using higher level mathematics and calculus if you were to look at it a little bit closer, and it's so much simpler using calculus than using the algebra that you just saw in that last one. For the equation, determine the value of the roots, round it to 2 decimal places, and express it in factored form. And the one thing about this lesson is, if you did try and factor this, you're not going to be able to find two numbers which multiply to minus 1 and add to minus 4. So, we begin. Here's how I would start this. There's no number here, but it's like it's a 1. This is minus 4, and this is negative 1. So that's A, B, C. A is equal to 1, B is equal to minus 4, and c is equal to -1. I'm going to put these into our quadratic equation. X is equal to -b, which is -4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 16. Now I guess I should be nice for the first time going through this. -4 squared minus 4 times 1, which is a, times c, which is -1, and all over 2a, which is going to be 2 times 1. And actually there is a simple way of doing this. What I would do in your situation is I would simplify this and this and this separately, and then I would write it down below. So what this would turn into is 4 plus or minus the square root of, if I use a calculator to do all this stuff, I'm going to find out that this is equal to, I got my calculator on the right side of the screen, 20 divided by 2 times 1 is just 2. So there's going to be 2 answers here. And the reason why I like to put it like this is because then I don't have to do all that work again and substitute in all this work just for putting a negative here. So here's one answer. X is equal to 4 plus square root of 20 over 2. That doesn't look good. Let's redo that. Square root of 20 over 2. And that will turn into x equal to 4.24. The other answer is going to be x is equal to 4 minus the square root of 20 divided by 2. And so x is equal to, using our calculator, minus 0.24. And technically I should be using these squiggly equal signs, which means it's approximately equal to, not exactly equal to. And what this did say is expressed it in factored form. So in factored form it's a times x minus r1 times x minus r2. Our a value is 1. So 1 bracket x minus 4.24 bracket x plus, because the minus turns plus, 0.24. And if you're not too sure where those numbers are coming from, this one's coming here. That's one of the roots, and this is another root. Moving on, this is a try it yourself. Try and do this question on your own. And then I'll use how to chance to do it. A is equal to 5, B is equal to minus 6, and C is equal to minus 2. And so we're going to substitute these values into our quadratic formula. And those A, B, and C are coming from those three numbers. X is equal to negative B, which is going to be 6, plus square root of negative b squared, which is going to be, b squared, which is 36. That's 6 times 6 squared minus 4 times 5 times negative 2, all divided by 2 times a, which is 10. 2 times 5 is a 10. X is equal to 6 plus square root of, now let's see here, this is where I'm going to use my calculator, and I find out that that is root 76. I've done a few shortcuts because when I do math, this is how I'd be doing it. I know in the last example I showed you that this would have been negative 6 squared, and that would have been negative 6, but in reality, when I do this in real practice, I'm not going to be writing it like that. I'd probably be saving myself a line of work and some time to do it. Now, I've also put this as plus, so x is equal to, in this case, 1.47. Again, I should be using that approximately equal sign, so it's not exact. And then on the other side, I don't have to do any more work because I've already done it all here. The only thing I change is this plus to a minus, so it's 6 minus root 76 divided by 10. So x is approximately equal to negative 0.27. And so factored form, our a value is 5, y equals 5 bracket x minus 1.47 times x plus 0.27. And we've now found the factored form, 2 decimal places. Third question, we've got an application problem. A rocket is modeled by this equation where h is the height when did the rocket leave and hit the ground. Again, I encourage you to pause it at this point. Ultimately, we're looking for when h is equal to 0, and we're going to solve it using this. In this case, we also know that if this is in standard form, our a value is minus 2.68. Our b value is equal to 8.04, and our c value is equal to 3. So we're going to substitute these into our quadratic equation. X is equal to, it's always x value, negative b, which is negative 8.04, plus the square root of 8.04 squared minus 4 times negative 2.68 times c, which is 3, bracket, underline, divided by 2 times a, 2 times negative 2.68. Make sure you don't forget that negative. That's important. So x is equal to, now I would use my calculator to simplify this in one step and this in one step, and that's already done. Don't need to do anything with that. Now what do I get on this next line? Now I'm going to have to pause it and actually calculate. Alright, now that I got out my trusty calculator, this is 8.04 plus the square root of 96.8. And you could go more decimal places than that. If you wanted to be on the safe side, you could go 0.2, just to make sure that you're not going to have any errors. And this would be, oh, I didn't do that one yet, 2 times negative 2.68 is going to be equal to negative 5.36. And so using my calculator, I'm going to get as an answer, this will be equal to, let's see here, this should be, based on what I see over on my calculating screen, 3.336. And the other answer is going to be, when this turns negative, x is equal to negative 8.04 minus bracket 96.802 divided by negative 5.36. And x is going to be approximately equal to negative 0.336. So in the context of this question, it means that the rocket left the ground at negative 0.336 seconds and it hit the ground at 3.336 seconds. And the only other thing that we need to do for this video is show you how to verify your answer. So here is something called wolframalpha.com. It's an excellent website which you can find by typing in quadratic equation solver and Wolfram Alpha. And we just need to put in our values, negative 2.68, x squared, 8.04, and 3. And we can go to submit. And it will show you a nice exact answer using square roots, or if you want approximate forms, it will also tell you the decimal forms, which we also got, and it also shows you a nice little visual of what's going on with the quadratic. Option number 2 that you have is Desmos.com. With Desmos.com, I've just taken the equation, I've put it in, and one beautiful thing about this is that when you go over top and you click where it intersects the x-axis, it automatically comes up with those points highlighted. The main points, vertex, y-intercept, and x-intercepts, they're all very easy and nice to see, and if you started putting in lines, you can also find the intersection points of those. That's it for this lesson. As usual, practice makes perfect. You've got these homework questions to do, and it might take you a long time to do this at the start, but the more you practice, the quicker you'll get. Thanks for watching.